The Galactic Council building floated in the darkness of space like a giant flower made of metal and glass. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went from its many docking ports. Inside, the great chamber held representatives from every known species in the galaxy. They sat in curved rows that rose up like steps, each section designed to fit the bodies of different aliens. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms and compound eyes that saw in every direction. The Mora were beings made of living crystal that sang when they spoke. The tide had no fixed shape at all and flowed like water in special containment suits. And in the largest section, raised above all others, sat the Draconians. The Draconians were dragons, not the small lizards of Earth legend, but true dragons. They stood 12 feet tall, covered in scales harder than steel. They had wings that could carry them through the vacuum of space itself. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years, and they had never lost a war. Today, their queen had come to the council in person. This almost never happened. Queen entered through the main doors, and every conversation stopped at once. She was beautiful in the way that a storm is beautiful, or a volcano. Her scales were the color of obsidian, so black they seemed to drink in the light around her. Her eyes burned like twin suns, gold and orange and red all mixed together. When she walked, her claws clicked against the metal floor like the ticking of a clock counting down to something terrible. Behind her came 20 royal guards, each one a warrior who had killed at least 100 enemies in battle. But no one looked at them. Everyone looked at. She stopped in the center of the chamber and spread her wings. They stretched out wide enough to cast shadows over the first 3 rows of seats. "I am," she said, and her voice was like thunder rolling across mountains. "Queen of the Draconian Empire, ruler of 1,000 worlds, I have come to demand justice." The council speaker, a small furry creature named from a peaceful trading world, stood up on shaking legs. "Your Majesty, we welcome you. What justice do you seek?" 3 months ago, a human ship entered Draconian space without permission. It landed on the moon of. It took samples of sacred ground, ground where my ancestors are buried. Its tail swept across the floor, leaving marks in the metal. This is an insult that cannot be forgiven. In the human section, people shifted nervously in their seats. Humanity was new to the galactic community, having only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were considered young, weak, and not very important. Their section was small, tucked away in a corner where no one had to look at them if they did not want to. Ambassador Park stood up slowly. He was 43 years old, with hair at his temples and lines around his eyes that came from too many years of difficult work. He was not tall or strong or impressive looking. He wore a simple suit. When he spoke, his voice was calm and quiet. "Your Majesty," he said, "I believe there has been a misunderstanding. The ship you speak of was a scientific vessel. They did not know the moon was sacred. They were simply collecting geological samples for research. No disrespect was intended." Turn to look at him. When a Draconian looked at you with those burning eyes, most beings felt the urge to run away or fall to their knees. Did neither. He simply looked back at her and waited. "Intention does not matter," said. "The insult was given. Now it must be answered." She raised one clawed hand and pointed directly at. "I challenge you, Ambassador of Earth, to single combat, your life against the honor of my ancestors." The chamber exploded with noise. Delegates shouted and argued. They clicked their mandibles in distress. The Mora sang sharp notes of alarm. Even some of the Draconians looked surprised. His aide lieutenant grabbed his arm. She was young, only 28, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had been assigned to him because she was one of the best security officers in the fleet. Right now, her face was pale with fear. "Sir, you cannot accept," she whispered urgently. "This is a death sentence. Queen has fought 17 ritual combats in her life. She has won all of them. The champions she faced were the greatest warriors their species had to offer, and she killed every single one. I know, said. Then you know this is suicide. We can refuse. We can negotiate. We can. We can do nothing. His voice was gentle but firm. If I refuse, it is the same as admitting guilt. The Draconians will have the right to declare war on Earth. How many people will die in that war? How many millions? Billions. His grip on his arm tightened. So you will die instead, one life for many. Perhaps. Looked at Queen, who was waiting with an expression that might have been satisfaction or might have been something else entirely. Or perhaps not. Humans have survived a very long time, Lieutenant. Not because we are the strongest or the fastest or the most powerful. We survived because we learned to see things that others miss. He gently removed his hand from his arm and stepped forward. The noise in the chamber died down as everyone watched him. Your Majesty, said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence, I accept your challenge. His eyes narrowed slightly. Whatever she had expected, it was not immediate acceptance with no attempt at negotiation. You understand what you agree to. This is combat to the death. There is no surrender, no mercy. One of us will not leave the arena alive. I understand. You may choose any weapon you wish, any armor, any advantage your primitive species can provide. I understand. Stared at him for a long moment. Then she made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a growl. You are either very brave or very foolish, human. I have not decided which. Many people have said the same thing, replied. Usually they decide I am foolish. Sometimes they change their minds later. The combat will take place in 3 days, announced to the chamber. On the arena platform above Ashen 4, all who wish to witness may come. She turned back to one last time. Prepare yourself, ambassador, and say goodbye to those you love. You will not see them again. She walked out of the chamber, her guards following behind her. The doors closed with a sound like the sealing of a tomb. Immediately was at side again. Sir, we need to contact Earth. We need to get you the best weapons, the best armor, the best combat training available. We have 3 days. It is not enough time, but maybe. No, said. No, sir, with respect, this is not the time for pride. You need every advantage. I do not need weapons or armor. Turned to look at her, and there was something in his eyes that made stop talking. It was not fear. It was not desperation. It was something quieter and stranger. It looked almost like curiosity. What do you need then? Asked. Information, said. I need you to find me everything you can about Queen, not her battles, not her victories. I want to know about her life, her family, her health. Every detail, no matter how small or unimportant it seems. Why? Looked at the doors through which had disappeared. His brow was slightly furrowed, like he was trying to solve a puzzle that no one else could see. Because something is wrong, he said quietly. She did not come here for justice. She did not come here for honor. She came here for something else entirely, and I intend to find out what. Ashen 4 was a moon that should not have existed. It orbited a dying star, and its surface was covered with volcanoes that never stopped erupting. Rivers of molten rock flowed across the land like blood through veins. The air was thick with ash and poison. Nothing could live there. Nothing wanted to. The Draconians had built their arena there anyway. The platform floated 300 feet above the largest volcano, held in place by anti-gravity generators that hummed with constant power. It was a circle of black stone, perfectly flat, with no walls or railings around the edge. If you fell, you would drop into the fire below and burn until there was nothing left of you. This was considered part of the challenge. Spectator ships surrounded the platform at a safe distance. There were thousands of them, carrying beings from every corner of the galaxy. Some had come because they wanted to see the famous Dragon Queen fight. Some had come because they wanted to see a human die. Some had come because they simply could not believe what was about to happen and needed to see it with their own eyes. On the observation deck of the human ship Mercy's Hand, Lieutenant stood with her hands pressed against the window. She had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red and her body was exhausted, but she could not look away from the arena below. "He is going to die," she whispered. "He is going to die and there is nothing I can do." Behind her, the ship's doctor, a gentle man named, put a hand on her shoulder. "The ambassador made his choice. All we can do now is watch and hope." Hope for what? A miracle. Did not answer. He had no answer to give. On the arena platform, the two fighters stood at opposite ends. The heat rising from the volcano below made the air shimmer and dance. Queen stood perfectly still, her black scales gleaming with reflected fire. In her hand she held her ceremonial blade, a curved sword of dark metal that was longer than was tall. The blade had a name, Sorrow's End. It had killed 900 enemies over the centuries. Today it would kill one more. At the other end of the platform stood in his simple suit. He carried no weapon. He wore no armor. He had nothing except himself. A draconian priest stepped to the edge of the platform. His voice boomed out across the arena, carried by speakers to every watching ship. "This is a duel of honor," the priest announced. "The challenged has chosen the weapon of no weapon. This is his right. The combat will continue until one fighter is dead or unable to continue. There will be no interference. Let the ancestors witness and judge. Begin." The priest disappeared in a flash of light, transported away from the platform. For a moment, neither fighter moved. Then spoke, her voice carrying across the distance between them. "Human, where is your weapon?" His voice was calm and clear. "I will not need one, Your Majesty." In the spectator ships there was laughter. The draconians roared with amusement. Other species shook their heads or made sounds of pity. This foolish human had given up. He was simply waiting to die. But watching from the observation deck noticed something. Stance was relaxed but not defeated. His eyes were focused but not afraid. He looked like a man who was waiting for something specific, something only he knew about. "What are you doing?" whispered. "What do you see that we do not?" Began to move. She did not charge immediately. She walked toward with slow, deliberate steps, her blade held low at her side. She was giving him time to reconsider, time to pick up a weapon, time to at least try to defend himself. Did not move. When was 30 feet away, she stopped. "You truly intend to face me with nothing. This is not bravery, human. This is stupidity." "Perhaps," said, "but I have found that the difference between bravery and stupidity often depends on the outcome." His eyes narrowed. Then without warning she attacked. She was fast, impossibly fast. A creature her size should not have been able to move like that. Her blade cut through the air with a sound like tearing silk, aimed directly at its neck. He was not there. At the last possible moment had stepped to the side. The blade passed through empty air, missing him by less than an inch. Spun, adjusting her attack with incredible skill, bringing the blade around in a horizontal slash that should have cut him in half. Ducked, the blade passed over his head close enough to ruffle his hair. Attacked again, and again, and again. Each strike was faster than the last. Each strike was aimed with deadly precision. Each strike missed. Did not run. He did not retreat to the other side of the platform. He stayed close to her, moving just enough to avoid each attack, his eyes never leaving her body. He moved forward when she expected him to move back. He moved left when she expected right. He seemed to know where her blade would be before she swung it. The laughter in the spectator ships had stopped. The draconians were no longer amused. They were confused. Some were beginning to look worried. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Attacks became more aggressive, more desperate. Her breathing grew heavier. Sweat that looked like molten gold began to drip from her scales. "Fight me," she roared, her composure finally breaking. "Stop running and fight." "I am not running," said. He was breathing hard too, but his voice was still calm. "I am watching." "Watching? Watching what?" "You." He stepped back, creating space between them for the first time since the duel began. Paused, her blade raised, her chest heaving with effort. "You favor your left side," said. "Every time you swing, you shift your weight to the left. You are compensating for something on your right." His golden eyes widened slightly. "Your right wing has not extended fully even once during this fight. When you twist your body, you stop before completing the motion. There is something limiting your movement, something painful." The platform was silent, except for the distant roar of the volcano below. "When you raise your blade above your shoulder, your breathing changes. It becomes shorter, sharper. You are hiding pain, a lot of pain." His voice was gentle now, no longer the voice of an opponent but the voice of someone who was concerned. "You are injured, Your Majesty, badly injured, and you have been hiding it for a very long time." In the spectator ships there was chaos. The Draconians were shouting in denial. Other species were murmuring in shock. On the observation deck, felt tears running down her face, though she was not sure why. "How long?" asked quietly. "How long have you been carrying this weight alone?" Stood frozen. Her blade trembled in her hands. Her face, which had shown only pride and anger since she entered the council chamber 3 days ago, was now showing something else. Fear. Not fear of death, fear of being seen, fear of being known. "You do not know what you are talking about," she said, but her voice had lost its thunder. "I do," said, "because I have seen it before, in soldiers who refuse to admit they are wounded, in leaders who think showing pain is showing weakness, in people who would rather die than let others see them suffer." He took a step toward her, not as an attacker but as something else entirely. "You did not come here for justice or honor. You came here to die, did you not?" The blade fell from his hands. It hit the black stone with a clang that echoed across the silent arena. The Dragon Queen, ruler of 1,000 worlds, looked at the small human standing before her, and she had no words left to speak. The arena floated in silence above the fire. The volcano below continued to roar and burn, but no one was listening to it anymore. Every eye in every ship was fixed on the two figures standing on the platform. Queen had not moved since her blade fell. She stood like a statue carved from black stone, her wings pressed tight against her back, her golden eyes staring as if she was seeing him for the first time. As if she was seeing anyone for the first time in a very long while. Understood that look. He had seen it in refugees who had lost everything. He had seen it in prisoners who had been alone in the dark for too long. He had seen it in the mirror once, many years ago, when his wife had died, and he thought he would never feel anything again. It was the look of someone who had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Slowly, carefully lowered himself to one knee. He placed his hands on his thighs with the palms facing upward. It was an old human gesture, one that meant many things: surrender, supplication, trust. It meant, "I am not a threat." It meant, "I am here to listen." The Draconians in the spectator ships began shouting in confusion and anger. This was not how duels worked. The human was supposed to fight or die. He was not supposed to kneel. He was not supposed to look at their queen with that expression of quiet concern. But did not care about the Draconians in the ships. He cared about the Draconian in front of him. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice soft enough that only she could hear it, "why are you hurt?" Made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob. "You think you have figured everything out, human. You think you know my secrets because you watched me fight for 20 minutes. "No," said, "I know almost nothing. That is why I am asking." "You could ask the entire galaxy. They would tell you that I am the strongest warrior alive. They would tell you that I have never been defeated. They would tell you that I am the terror of 1,000 worlds." His voice cracked on the last word, just slightly, just enough. "I do not care what the galaxy says," replied. "I care what is true." Was quiet for a long moment. The heat from the volcano made the air between them shimmer and wave. In the distance, lightning flashed inside the clouds of ash that filled the sky. It happened 40 years ago, said at last. Her voice was different now, smaller, more tired. The Succession War, do you know of it? Nodded slowly. I have read about it. When your father died, you and your sister both claimed the throne. The war lasted 3 years. 2 years, 7 months, and 12 days, closed her eyes. I counted everyone. My sister and I had been close once. When we were young, we played together in the palace gardens. We learned to fly together. We shared our dreams and our fears. A bitter smile crossed her face. Then our father died and everything changed. What happened? What always happens when there is power to be gained. The noble houses chose sides. Some supported me. Some supported. The empire split in two and we went to war. Opened her eyes and looked at. Have you ever fought someone you loved, human? Have you ever tried to kill someone who used to hold your hand when you were afraid of the dark? No, admitted. Then you cannot understand. You cannot possibly understand what it cost me. Touched her right side, just below where her wing connected to her body. The final battle was on the plains of, and I faced each other while our armies fought around us. She was always better with a blade than I was, faster, more precise. She cut me here. Her clawed hand pressed against the spot. The blade went deep. It damaged things inside me that draconian doctors did not know how to fix. But you won, said. Yes, I won. His voice was empty. I killed my sister. I held her in my arms while she died, and with her last breath she told me she was sorry. She said she never wanted any of this. She said she loved me. On the observation deck was crying openly now. She did not care who saw. Beside her, Doctor had tears running down his weathered face as well. The wound never healed properly, continued. It got worse over time. Our doctors tried everything, but draconian medicine is focused on combat. We know how to close cuts and set bones. We do not know how to fix nerve damage that spreads a little more each year. She laughed, and it was the saddest sound had ever heard. I am dying, human, slowly but certainly, and when I die, my empire will tear itself apart. Your daughter said, Princess Miso. She is only 15 years old, still a child by our standards. The noble houses will not accept her as queen. They will fight among themselves for the throne just as and I did. Millions will die, maybe billions. Looked at with those burning golden eyes, and he saw the weight of an entire civilization pressing down on her. So I made a plan. If I could die in glorious combat against a foreign enemy, it would unite the houses. They would be too busy seeking revenge to fight each other. My daughter would have time to grow strong enough to hold the throne. You chose humanity, said. You chose us to be the enemy. You were convenient, weak enough that my people would be confident of victory, knew enough that there were no alliances to complicate things. His wings shifted slightly, a gesture that might have been shame. I did not think about your people. I did not think about how many humans would die in the war I was trying to start. I thought only of my own. Was quiet for a moment. In the spectator ships, millions of beings held their breath, waiting to see what the human would do next. Your Majesty, said finally, may I stand? Nodded. Rose to his feet. He was small compared to her, fragile, a creature of soft skin and brittle bones standing before a dragon queen who could tear him apart with a single swipe of her claws. He reached out and took her hand. Her scales were warm from the heat of the volcano below. They were rough against his palm. She could have killed him in that moment. She could have crushed his hand to pulp without even trying. Instead, she stood perfectly still and let this strange little human hold her hand as if she were a child who needed comfort. On Earth, said, we have doctors who specialize in nerve damage. They have spent centuries learning how to repair the kind of injury you are describing. It is not easy and it is not quick, but it is possible. Stared at him, what? Your wound, the one your sister gave you 40 years ago. I believe it can be healed. That is impossible, our doctors said. Your doctors said draconian medicine cannot help you. They were right, smiled gently. But human medicine is different. We are a fragile species, Your Majesty. We break easily. so we have become very good at fixing ourselves." For the first time since the duel began, hope flickered in its golden eyes. It was small and uncertain, like a candle flame in a strong wind, but it was there. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help me? I tried to kill you. I tried to start a war with your people. Why would you offer me anything except hatred?" Smile grew a little wider. "Because hatred is heavy, your majesty. I have carried it before. I know what it costs, and I have learned that there are better things to carry." "Such as?" Hope said simply. "Compassion, the belief that even the worst situations can get better if we are willing to try." Looked at their joined hands, her massive clawed fist wrapped gently around his small human fingers. She looked at this man who had refused to fight her, who had knelt before her, who had asked her why she was hurt instead of trying to hurt her more. And for the first time in 40 years, the Dragon Queen let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she did not have to die. The private chamber aboard the draconian royal ship was built for creatures much larger than humans. The ceiling rose 30 feet above the floor. The chairs were massive things carved from stone that had been brought from the air was hotter than any human would find comfortable. Sat on a chair designed for someone 3 times his size and did not complain. Across from him, Queen lay on a medical platform while draconian healers scanned her body with instruments that glowed with soft blue light. The healers worked in silence. They had not spoken since the duel ended 2 hours ago. None of them seemed to know what to say. Standing near the door was a draconian general named. He was old for his kind, his scales faded to a dull, but his eyes were sharp and his posture was straight. When had first entered the room, had stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once in greeting. It was a simple gesture, but understood its meaning. Respect. Lieutenant stood beside's chair, her hand resting on the weapon at her hip. She had not wanted him to come aboard a draconian ship, especially not alone, but had insisted, and she had learned that when he insisted on something, there was usually a reason. "The scans confirm what you suspected," the head healer said too. His voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. "The nerve damage has spread further than our previous examinations showed. At the current rate of progression, you have perhaps 5 years before complete paralysis of your right side." Closed her eyes, and then the paralysis will spread to your vital organs. Another year, perhaps 2, and the healer did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. "Can you stop it?" asked. The healer turned to look at him with an expression of confusion and annoyance. He was not used to being addressed by lesser species. "No, draconian medicine does not have the ability to repair nerve damage of this type. We have tried everything." "Everything your medicine knows," said. He pulled out his communicator and pressed a button. "Doctor, are you receiving this transmission?" The communicator crackled and then's calm voice came through. "I am here, Ambassador. I have been monitoring the medical scans remotely. Fascinating physiology, truly fascinating." The draconian healer's scales flushed with anger. "You have been accessing our medical systems without permission." "I gave him permission," said without opening her eyes. "Continue, human doctor." His voice was thoughtful. "The nerve damage is extensive, but the underlying structure is still intact. The problem is not that the nerves are destroyed. The problem is that they have stopped communicating with each other properly. It is like a road that has not been maintained. The road is still there, but it is so full of holes and cracks that no one can drive on it anymore." "Can you repair this road?" asked. "I believe so, yes. The treatment is called neural pathway restoration therapy. We inject a special solution that encourages the nerves to rebuild their connections. It is a slow process, 6 months to a year, but the success rate for injuries like yours is around 85%. The chamber was silent. The draconian healer looked at its voice coming from the communicator, as if it had just spoken in an ancient language that had been dead for thousands of years. 85%, repeated. You are saying that there is an 85% chance that you can heal an injury that my own doctors have declared impossible to treat. I am saying that human medicine has a different perspective, said. Draconians are strong. Your bodies heal quickly from external wounds, but your medical science has focused on those strengths. You have not needed to develop treatments for slow internal damage because you rarely suffer from it. There was no judgment in his voice, only explanation. Humans are weak. Our bodies break easily, so we have spent our entire history learning how to fix what is broken. General stepped forward. His old scales caught the light as he moved. Your Majesty, may I speak? Opened her eyes and looked at him. You have served me for 30 years. You do not need permission. I was not born a draconian, said. The words fell into the room like stones dropping into still water. I was born human, on a colony world that was conquered by the Empire 60 years ago. I was taken as a war prize when I was a child. I was raised in the palace as a servant, and later as a soldier, and eventually as a general. His hand tightened on her weapon, remained perfectly still. I was 20 years old, continued. I was injured in a training accident, a blade through my spine. The draconian doctors said I would never walk again. They said the damage was too severe, the nerves too badly destroyed. He straightened his back even more, demonstrating the strength in his body. A human doctor from a merchant ship visited the palace 6 months later. She examined me in secret at my request. She gave me a series of injections over the course of a year. And now I walk. I fight, I lead armies. Stared at him. You never told me this. You never asked, Your Majesty. His voice was gentle despite its depth. And I was afraid. Afraid that if you knew human medicine had saved me, you would think less of me, that you would see me as weak. I see you as the finest general in my empire. Then perhaps you will believe me when I tell you that the human doctor is speaking the truth. Their medicine is strange and slow and requires patience that draconians are not known for. But it works. Was quiet for a long time. Outside the ship, the volcano moon of Ashen 4 continued to burn. Millions of beings in the spectator ships waited for news. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. Finally turned to look at, Ambassador, I have a question for you. Yes, Your Majesty. I came to the Galactic Council seeking to use your people as an enemy. I challenged you to a duel intending to die and leave behind a war that would have killed millions of your kind. I looked at humanity and saw nothing but a convenient sacrifice. Her golden eyes bore into his. Why do you want to save me? Considered the question carefully. It deserved a careful answer. When I was young, he said finally, my daughter was very sick. She had a disease that was slowly destroying her heart. The doctors on our world could not help her, but doctors from another colony, one that we had been in conflict with for years, offered to treat her. They had developed a new procedure that could save her life. Did you accept their help? I did not want to. I was proud and angry. I thought that accepting help from our enemies would be a sign of weakness, smiled sadly. My wife convinced me otherwise. She said that pride is a small thing compared to a child's life. She said that enemies are just people we have not yet learned to understand. And your daughter? She is alive. She is healthy. She has children of her own now. Met's gaze without flinching. The doctors who saved her became our friends. The conflict between our colonies ended. What could have been a story of loss and war became a story of healing and peace. Looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something that no draconian queen had done in recorded history. She laughed. Not the bitter, empty laugh from the arena, but a real laugh, full of wonder and disbelief. You are a very strange creature, Park, she said. So I have been told. Very well, rose from the medical platform. She stood tall, her wings spreading slightly, her scales gleaming in the chamber's light. But there was something different about her now. The weight she had carried for 40 years seemed just a little bit lighter. I accept your offer of treatment, she announced, and in return I withdraw my challenge. There will be no war between the Draconian Empire and Earth. She looked at, then back at. Instead, there will be something else, something new. "And what is that, Your Majesty?" asked. His golden eyes softened. "I do not know yet, but I think it will be interesting to find out." 1 year later, the Galactic Council chamber was full again. Every seat was taken. Every viewing screen in every corner of the galaxy was tuned to the proceedings. What was about to happen had never happened before in the 10,000-year history of the Draconian Empire. Ambassador Park stood in the human section, but it was no longer a small corner tucked away where no one had to look. The human section had been expanded 3 times in the past year. Now it occupied a place of honor near the center of the chamber. Beside him stood Lieutenant, who was no longer a lieutenant. She had been promoted to commander after her role in the events at Ashen 4 became known. Doctor sat nearby, his medical tablet resting on his lap. He had spent the last year traveling between Earth and the Draconian, overseeing the Queen's treatment and training Draconian healers in human medical techniques. He looked tired but happy. He looked like a man who had found his purpose. General stood at the entrance to the chamber, no longer hiding his human origins. He had become something of a celebrity in both human and Draconian space, a living symbol of what was possible when 2 species stopped fighting and started talking. The doors at the far end of the chamber opened. Queen walked in. She did not stride or march or stomp. She walked. There was ease in her movement, grace that had been missing for decades. Her right wing extended fully as she moved, catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. When she raised her arm in greeting, there was no hesitation, no hidden pain, no careful compensation. She looked like a queen who had been reborn. The chamber erupted in applause. Even species that had feared and hated the Draconians for centuries found themselves clapping or making their own sounds of approval. It was impossible not to feel moved by what they were seeing. Reached the central platform and turned to face the gathered delegates. Beside her stood a young Draconian female with scales that shimmered between purple and blue. Princess Miso had grown in the past year. She was still young by Draconian standards, but there was wisdom in her eyes now. Wisdom and hope. "Delegates of the Galactic Council," announced, her voice ringing clear and strong, "I stand before you a changed being. 1 year ago I came to this chamber seeking death. I came seeking war. I came blind to everything except my own pain and fear." She paused and looked at the human section. Her golden eyes found and something passed between them. Understanding, gratitude, friendship. Ambassador Park of Earth saw what I could not see in myself. He saw my wounds, not as weaknesses to be exploited, but as problems to be solved. He offered me healing when I offered him only threats. He offered me hope when I had none left. The chamber was silent now. Every being listened with complete attention. For 40 years I carried the weight of my sister's death. I carried the guilt of winning a war that should never have been fought. I carried a wound that slowly poisoned my body and my mind. I thought that my only choice was to use that pain as a weapon, to turn it into a war that would protect my empire even as it destroyed me. Shook her head slowly. I was wrong. There is always another choice. There is always another way. She gestured, and a Draconian aide brought forward a small object on a velvet cushion. It was a blade, old and worn, with a crack running down its center. "This is the blade my sister used to wound me," said. "For 40 years I have kept it as a reminder of my failure, a reminder of my pain." She picked up the blade carefully. "Today I give it to Ambassador, not as a trophy of his victory, but as a symbol of what humanity has taught me." Stepped forward. He was still small, still fragile-looking, still unremarkable by galactic standards. But when he reached out and accepted the blade, every eye in the chamber saw something different than they had seen a year ago. They saw strength, not the strength of muscles or claws or scales, a different kind of strength, the strength of someone who could look at a monster and see a patient, the strength of someone who could face death and offer healing instead. "This blade has caused great pain," said. "Let it now be a symbol of something better. Let it remind us all that wounds can be healed, that enemies can become friends, that the darkness of the past does not have to determine the light of the future." Bowed deeply. When he straightened, he was smiling that same tired, kind smile he had worn since the first day of this strange journey. "Your Majesty," he said, "on Earth we have a tradition. When someone gives us a gift, we give one in return." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small package wrapped in plain paper. "This is not as grand as a historic blade, but I hope you will accept it." Took the package and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a photograph in a simple frame. The photograph showed a human woman with hair and kind eyes, holding a baby with chubby cheeks and a toothless smile. "My wife," explained, "and my first grandchild. My wife passed away 8 years ago, but she used to say that the greatest gift we can give anyone is hope. I believe she would have wanted you to have this picture, as a reminder that there is always something worth living for, always something to look forward to." Stared at the photograph for a long moment. When she looked up, her golden eyes were wet. She was beautiful. "Yes, she was." "And you loved her very much." "Yes, I still do." Carefully tucked the photograph into a fold of her ceremonial robe, close to her heart. "Then I will treasure this gift, Ambassador. It will remind me of what is truly important." The council speaker, little with her trembling legs, cleared her throat. "If the Queen is finished with the presentation of gifts, we have official business to conduct." "Yes," said, straightening to her full height, "the official business." She looked out at the assembled delegates. "The Draconian Empire formally requests admission to the Earth Alliance as a full partner nation." The chamber exploded with sound. Shouting, cheering, gasping, arguing. They clicked their mandibles so fast it sounded like rain on a tin roof. The Mora sang chords of pure astonishment. Even the shapeless tide rippled with visible shock in their containment suits. Smiled, laughed, wiped tears from his eyes. The most powerful military empire in the galaxy, the terror of 1,000 worlds, was asking to join an alliance led by a species that had only discovered space travel 50 years ago. It was impossible. It was unprecedented. It was wonderful. Later, after the voting and the speeches and the celebrations, found himself standing on an observation deck looking out at the stars. The party was still going on behind him, but he needed a moment of quiet. Found him there. "You are not celebrating," she said, coming to stand beside him. She was so tall that her head nearly touched the ceiling even in this spacious area. "I am celebrating," said. "This is how I celebrate, quietly, with the stars." Made a sound that might have been understanding. "I have been thinking about what you said, about your wife, about hope." "Yes. For 40 years I saw myself as a warrior, a queen, a symbol. I forgot that I was also a person who was allowed to be tired, who was allowed to be hurt, who was allowed to ask for help." Looked down at him with those ancient golden eyes. "You reminded me of that. You looked at the Dragon Queen and saw a woman in pain. I do not know if I can ever repay that gift." "There is nothing to repay," said. "What I did for you, someone else did for me once, and someday you will do it for someone else. That is how it works. That is how we all survive. By helping each other." "Yes." Was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, soft and warm, nothing like the terrible thunder of a year ago. "You know what the galaxy will say about this day." "What?" "They will say that the Dragon Queen was defeated by a human, that the mighty Draconian Empire was brought low by a weak, soft species from a small planet at the edge of nowhere." Shrugged. "Let them say what they want." "They will be wrong, of course." Placed her massive clawed hand gently on his shoulder. "I was not defeated. I was saved, and that is a very different thing." She turned and walked back toward the celebration, her wings spread wide, her head held high. She walked like someone who had finally put down a weight she had been carrying for far too long. Watched her go, then he turned back to the stars and smiled. Out there in the darkness, new worlds were waiting, new challenges, new opportunities to turn enemies into friends and wounds into healing. Humanity was ready. They had always been ready. Not because they were strong or fast or powerful, but because they knew something that the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to learn. The greatest weapon is not a blade or a claw or a bomb. The greatest weapon is the simple question, asked with genuine care, that changes everything. Why are you hurt? And even more importantly, how can I help? The end.